So we've talked a lot about the first half of the Clone Wars recently as we work through these battles in battle analysis episodes, but I figured today we'd take a closer look at what the beginning of the Clone Wars was like for the average citizen of the galaxy, particularly from the Republic side, but we'll touch on the Separatist side too. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So as I mentioned in a battle analysis video looking at the general strategic overview of the first half of the Clone Wars a few weeks back, it's clear that in the first few weeks of the Clone Wars, the Separatists did see significant success, and in fact, it was really more like the first few months, with Separatists being able to easily overwhelm Republic forces in the Mid-Rim and Outer Rim in the early days of the conflict. Now, most of this is due to the fact that Republic forces weren't really able to fully deploy militarily for the first year of the conflict, so in nearly every one of those battles, the Separatists had a significant numbers and firepower advantage that would slowly be offset as more and more clone troopers arrived on the battlefield. But from a general standpoint, what this looked like was that the early years of the Clone Wars was basically dominated by these massive Separatist offensives that easily overran Republic positions and took Republic-loyal worlds in the early days of the war. In the first few weeks of the war, they managed to take planets like Ryloth and besiege Christophsis, leading to two major battles and two planets that were essentially occupied by the Separatists in the opening days of the conflict. Combine this with the successes during the Skytop Station offensive and the assault on Felucia, and one could be forgiven for assuming in the early days that the Republic was just not going to be able to muster an effective defense. It would have looked to a Republic civilian like they were simply going to be overrun by battle droids in a matter of months and the Separatists were going to win the war. In fact, this led to a pretty strong culture of fear, particularly in the core worlds, that there'd be this tide of Separatist military activity that would basically sweep through the center of the galaxy and defeat the Republic in one fell swoop, ending the war perhaps in less than a year. It wasn't really until the Republic victories that started to occur about 6 or 7 months into the conflict that the population of the Republic started to have some hope that they might actually win the war. These are victories like the battles of Ryloth and the Second Battle of Geonosis. In reality, though, the Separatist offensives were relatively minor on the grand scheme of things, managing to seize strategically unimportant worlds and missing major Republic targets. For example, the Separatists bypassed Kamino to assault Bothawui, a strategic decision that makes no sense whatsoever. To be fair, the Separatists might not have had concrete information on where Kamino was, so maybe they couldn't plan an effective attack, but that's a discussion for another day. The point being that, for the Republic citizen, this would have been a very scary time. They were being fed propaganda by the Republic government that was talking about how evil the Separatists were, and they would have been getting whispers of some of the war crimes that were coming out of Separatist territory. Combine that with the fact that when you look at news reports coming from the war, you see the Republic losing, basically across the board. They're being overrun on Felucia, they're being gunned down on Ryloth, and resistance movements are basically the only thing keeping the Separatists at bay, and they're doing that just barely. So, once again, it would have looked like a imminent tide of Separatist victories was going to win the day. Now, for a citizen of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, it would have looked a little bit differently. There would have been some optimism in these early days. After all, they were seeing victories, and it really did look like they could gain their independence, which is what a lot of them were striving for. But there was this thought that the Republic had an ace up its sleeve. After all, they managed to pull this army out of nowhere during the First Battle of Geonosis, and no one, even in the Republic, knew how big the clone army was going to end up being. So, for the Separatists, it was a cautious optimism. It looked like they were gaining ground in the early days, but it wasn't really a certainty that they would manage to hold on to this territory rather than just grab it and have to give it up when a massive Republic counteroffensive retook it, which, by the way, is ultimately what ended up happening around the midpoint of the war. But ultimately, we're really focusing here more on the civilian side of things, what it would look like to a citizen of Coruscant or Raxus when they looked at the updates coming out of the war. If you want to learn about the strategic way the beginning of the war played out, I'll leave a link up here to my battle analysis on the first year of the Clone Wars, so you can get a look at the maps and what this would have looked like on a galactic scale from a practical standpoint. And down in the comments, I want you to tell me, assuming you were a Republic citizen during this period in galactic history, how scared do you think you would be? Would you be terrified of the Separatist advances, or would you be more confident that the Republic was going to be able to protect you and your home in the core worlds? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.